Welcome to The Quick Fix, a series that gives you wellness tips that are founded in research and that are practical and easy to apply in your life right now. These are short episodes that focus on all aspects of wellness: physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, financial, professional, and personal. The goal is to help you and I to live lives that are healthy and soaked with meaning and purpose. So let's get going. Hello, a warm welcome to 5 ways to help you through a low phase in your life. A low phase in your life. Now, all of us as human beings go through ups and downs in our life, and sometimes we go through a low phase and it just tends to last a little longer and seems to be a little lower than the normal stuff that we normally snap out of it. So if you or someone you know has been going through this low phase for a little while now, maybe about a few weeks, and in addition to just feeling low, the person feels no energy, or sleep cycle is disturbed, not getting enough sleep, or just wanting to stay in bed, or eating too much and putting on weight, or not eating enough and losing weight, or feeling tired all the time, not having the enthusiasm to do the sort of things one used to do, or have difficulty concentrating and has negative thoughts continuously spinning in one's head. Well, if all this is happening, or lots of this is happening, or some combination of this is happening, it's likely that it's not just a passing phase, but the person, perhaps you, perhaps someone you know, is struggling with a really, really low phase. In other words, perhaps it could be depression. Now, people have very mixed reactions when they hear this word, which is why I did not mention this D word in the title. But please don't switch me off yet. I think you'll really benefit from this conversation, and you'll find the 5 tips very useful to support someone you might care about, perhaps yourself. So just hang on and listen for a bit, and I promise not to make it depressive. So, just to use this word depression a few minutes for a few minutes, we tend to get intimidated by it, but we are aware of it mostly because of media reports and talking about celebrities who are struggling with it. But the reality is, so many of us don't really know what it is, what to do with it. Is it a disease? Can one catch it? Or is it something that can be cured by medicine? Does it mean that the person who's struggling with this is defective in some way, not strong enough? Or does it mean that the person has done something wrong? Or perhaps if it's a child of ours, does it mean that as parents we have messed up? Who is to blame? Well, these are the type of questions that run through our mind, and the reality is that many cases there are no clear-cut answers. And possibly that's why it intimidates us, that's why we're scared of it. So in this episode, I'd like to throw some light on it and look at ways that you and I can support someone who might be struggling with it, or perhaps use these tips to support ourselves. And it's difficult to cover everything about it in one episode, so I'll do 1 or 2 episodes over the next few weeks. So be sure to subscribe to this channel and follow it so that you're alerted when the next episodes are released. And I promise you, it'll be worth your while in listening. Now let's get going and try to understand this D word a little bit more so that it doesn't intimidate us. The irony is that unlike the stereotypes of depressions perhaps shown in movies or in the press, in glossy magazines, in novels, is that people are shown as shut up in a dark and gloomy room. But the fact is, many who struggle with depression come to work and run their families and lives without too many people noticing what they are going through. Often, even those who are struggling with it themselves camouflage it in humor or sarcasm or hide behind work so that they don't have to acknowledge it, so that they don't have to deal with it. And yet, this insidious condition does take a heavy toll on life and relationships. So, point number one is that it's around us. It may be within us or with someone who's close to us, but the fact is, we may not be noticing it. So, what is the one cause of depression? Well, the truth is, there is no one cause, and the truth is also that no one really knows for certain. It's not possible to pin down a reason or the reason. It's not genetic or biochemical as a certainty. Some genes in a person can make one vulnerable to it, but it does not cause it. Well, there are biochemical factors linked to it, but it's hard to establish them as the cause. So, really speaking, it's complex and it's complicated. It could be the family environment, it could be the social environment, it could be one particular incident that has triggered it, or it could be a series of repetitive incidents that has put one in this really, really low phase. So it's complex and it's complicated. Here's another myth that I'd like to bust up front about depression. And that is that going to a doctor or going to a psychiatrist more specifically can cure depression because he or she will give an antidepressant medication. And so if somebody is depressed, why don't you go to a psychiatrist and pop a pill? The common belief is that this is the cure for depression. It is not. In some very serious cases, medication may support the treatment, but medication does not cure it. Medication does not cure it. So people get into the clutches of this monster, of this low phase of depression in ways that are unique to them. Therefore, one needs to find a way that will help each person undo depression in ways that work for them. And oftentimes, going to medication as the first response may not be the most effective. A more effective way is to work with a knowledgeable counselor, to work with a life coach, and perhaps to work on oneself with the help of a friend or a mentor or a loved one. Talk therapy is usually a much better alternative to explore first rather than antidepressant medication. And if you are on medication, it cannot be the only way that helps you one get out. You need to combine it with therapy. What happens typically in depression? Well, as I said, it's complex, but here's an easy way that helps me understand it. So what happens is that the brain gets stuck in a groove of thinking and gets stuck in behaviors. Our body, our being gets stuck in this thinking and behaviors that are not helpful and that are not adaptive. And we just keep on moving in this round and round and round and round and round. So a simple way to understand what we need to do is that we need to jolt. We need to jolt or shake out of this groove or shake out of this rut of unhelpful thinking. Jolting or shaking out and then changing these stuck patterns can often help a person start undoing the process by creating an interruption in the process. And one way to do this is by adding new stimulation and experiences that can reignite the numbed brain. So that's what we want to do, reignite the numbed brain. So let's look at some quick ideas, some quick simple things that one can do without resorting to medication as a sort of first response mechanism. So I'd like to present 5 things for us to try out. either with ourselves or perhaps to encourage, to mentor, to work with somebody we know to help them get into these 5 things. Number one, the first is exercise. It doesn't matter what exercise. It could be walking, yoga, gym, just getting out. Exercise is an awesome first step to help the brain reignite and to start breaking away from these unhelpful thinking and behaving patterns. And keeping it simple, without going into the physiology or biochemistry of it, exercise ignites all the good stuff, all the good hormones in the body that give it the boost to break out of depressive thoughts. As a matter of fact, exercise can be equally effective, if not more, in terms of producing all the feel-good hormones, and so it's more effective often than the antidepressive medication. So number one, the first thing that we could try out is really getting back to exercise. Anything that works for you, exercise. Another way, point number two, or tip number two, to help you snap out, to help you jolt out of this rut that body and mind and soul might be getting into, is new experiences. Trying out new things. It could be very, very simple things. Getting out of one's familiar geography or physical space, going outdoors, going for a walk in the park with trees nearby or near a water body. It can be calming, it can be therapeutic, and it's a great way to help break the funk that one is in. In addition to this, new experiences, signing up for an activity that is dramatically different can also give a strong jolt to this record which is stuck in that depressed groove. So, for example, trying out something like trekking or going for a hike or rock climbing, indoors or outdoors, or trying out some sport, or just attending a class is something radically different, like perhaps theater or dance or Zumba. Anything that gives you a new experience, again, can be tremendously therapeutic in helping you break this cycle that one is stuck in. Here's point number 3. So we've said number 1 is exercise, number 2 is new experiences, number 3 is to stop talking. Stop talking to everybody, your close friends, your family, anybody who's willing to listen to you about how your life sucks. So continuously replaying negative or sad thoughts, continuously talking about the same old stuff that's dragging you down strengthens these associations in the brain, that channel actually becomes stronger and stronger, and then it causes the brain to look at all events through this lens of doom and gloom. So you're actually strengthening in your brains the circuits which are depressive by continuously talking about it. If you have to talk to a trained life coach, talk to a trained counselor who can help you snap out of it, who can help you work with what you're saying to yourself. So stop talking unnecessarily all the time to everybody, but start talking about things that have gone well for you. Start talking about happy times, about successes with yourself, with your friends, anyone else who cares to listen. Start talking. This is also something that your coach or your counselor will encourage you to start looking at, the positive things, the little things that you need to start acknowledging. So, tip number 4. So we looked at number 1 was exercise, number 2 was new experiences, number 3 to stop talking, and number 4 is to plan time for positive conversations. Number 4 is to plan time for positive conversations. If you have someone to talk to, plan time and talk about positive things, or write down these experiences in your diary or your journal. So have a one-on-one time set up in which you note positive things that have gone well, 2 things that have gone well, 1 thing that has gone well for you today, 2 or 3 things that you're grateful for, simple, small things that are very, very unique to you, but that have got positive or that you're grateful for. And as you start having these positive conversations with yourself, your brain can see it because it's seeing it written down, and it can start internalizing these positive, happy experiences that have been pushed back onto the back burner. This will also help correct these deep grooves that may have been stuck in your brain because of all the talking and constant focus on the negative. So record in your diary or journal, record some of your successes, your achievements, no matter how small you think they are. They're usually not that small. They must have had some impact, even if it is just for you in a small way. It's huge. Capture it, read it, review it on an ongoing basis. Start reprogramming what's happening in your head. And number 5 is to catch up with positive people. So change the people who are either sharing their bad stories or unhappy stories with you, or people who are just willing to listen to you, download negative stuff. Catch up and meet up and hang out with positive people. Start listening to upbeat music, or perhaps if you can relate, start watching comedies. These are some ways that you can create a little high for you to get your brain to snap out of the unhelpful groove. And that's why new experiences, going out, joining, for example, a running club or an exercise group, all these, you don't have negative people doing these things. So even if you may not be feeling it, go join this group so that you can start absorbing the positivity which is there in that group. So these were 5 ideas that I'd like you to try, experiment, and or perhaps encourage, mentor, coach, just support somebody to adapt some of these things if somebody is going through a really, really low phase in one's life. Finally, it's not really about just one thing or the thing that is the magic potion, or that is the one thing that if you do, it'll get sorted out. No. Each little bit that you do helps build the stimulation for the brain and supports it in a way, it supports it to sort of reawaken from its numb state. So even if you don't start feeling dramatically different, it stops the brain from further atrophy or further sinking into unhelpful or maladaptive states. And do these activities. It doesn't matter what you feel. Don't worry about the feeling. Start doing it, and the feeling is most likely to follow. So a combination of these actions would help us most to reboot and to start the process of getting back to a more adaptive and helpful way of living. Now, one caveat that we should all know. If a child, someone in our family or our own child, if our own child is going through a really, really low phase or is going through depression, then we must know that it's a systemic issue, it's a family issue, it's a context issue. It's not just something that it belongs to the child, or it's not that something is wrong with the child, or it's not just something that you send the child to a therapist to get fixed. The parents need to be involved to figure out what's happening within the family system to which they are contributing, which is leading to the child's state. Parents cannot delegate this away, or they cannot assume that the child will take a few pills and trust that things will get better. It's not a headache that goes away with taking 2 aspirins. So we need to understand that. So the objective in this episode, as we bring this episode to a close, was to create awareness around the subject of depression. Really, it's not for you to develop expertise in dealing with depression, but just so that we start understanding that in the majority of the cases, it's part of human experience. We all go through it. So there is nothing to be ashamed or afraid about. So some of the tips that I suggested and a quick review was to exercise new experiences, to stop talking negative, to plan time for positive conversations, to catch up with positive people, listen to upbeat music, movies. So some of these things may be helpful, but if you feel that this is really not cutting ice, then the most important thing you need to do is to work with a coach, with a life coach, or with a trained counselor. And the sooner that you do it, the better results you will get. And there is absolutely no shame in it. So I hope this episode has been helpful to sort of allay some of the confusion and fears around it. Thank you so much for listening, and see you in the next episode. And that's it for today. Thank you for listening. Please connect with us on coachtoolbox@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to follow, subscribe, and review this channel. Details of our ICF-approved coach training programs and our services as executive coaches and coaching supervisors are on www.globalcoachtrust.org. See you in our next session.